Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do think it's interesting that the ranking member of the subcommittee earlier today in the previous hearing referred to the crisis at the border as the so-called crisis, just like she referred to 85,000 lost children as so-called lost children. I think that gives you the mindset that you need to see. When I was down at La Jolla one time, I remember with CBP agent and I, we went down there, and if you remember how it is in La Jolla, you go and you can watch people coming across the river, and they're coming up the road, and there's a sign that tells them where to go, which way to go, because that's where CBP is. It's just myself and an agent. It's nighttime, and we saw a group, and they saw us. We're 200 yards away. There's 150 or so of them. They don't want to come because they're not quite sure who we are. And so we yell at them, we're Border Patrol, come on up. So they come on up. There was nobody over the age of 18. No one. We had kids who were 3 years old coming across. Who were they coming with? A coyote had brought them across the river and said, go your own way. We'll go with this group of people. Is that humane, Ms. Rodas? Ms. Rodriguez, is that humane?
No, absolutely not.
Ms. Vaughn?
No, not at all. There's policies that entice people to come like that. And frankly, if we're talking about relying on phone calls as so-called monitoring of kids post-placement, right, that's not...
I'm going to get into that. Don't go there yet. I'm going to get into that. I've been in Yuma, and I have seen the evidence of kids being reused to create a family unit. Same kid over and over again. Rent a kid. Not humane. But we're told that calling 85,000 children lost that have been placed, and by the way, it's not 90% going to parents anymore. It's a third or less going to parents in today's statistics and numbers. Ranking member wants to get the facts out. Those are the facts. Now, Ms. Rodas, you have said that the U.S. government is the middleman in a multi-billion-dollar migrant child trafficking operation. What did you mean when you used the term middleman? Microphone, please.
So the United States government is receiving the children from the smugglers at the border. And HHS is a $2.7 trillion agency, and over the last 2 years has spent approximately $10 billion. So they are using that money to receive those children and then transport those children to the end user.
And when you say end user, we're not talking necessarily even a blood relative. So I heard a Democrat witness talk about vetting. Can any of you talk about vetting? I mean, I could talk about vetting, but I want to hear from the witnesses. Tell us about the vetting that you've observed.
Well, in my personal capacity as the deputy of the federal case management team, vetting, I would like to say, with Mr. Carey, what he said is they are not an investigative organization, nor are they law enforcement. There was no one. I was shocked and I am stunned that there is no one with law enforcement experience overseeing where children are going. You have people applying for children who we know are members of transnational criminal organizations, yet there's no one with any data analytics background or anything like that overseeing this operation. It doesn't really pass the common sense test when we're pumping billions of dollars into a program that's overseen by people who simply are not qualified to do the job. When one individual can sponsor 20 or 30 or 40 people and no one's asking a question about it, there's something seriously wrong and flawed with that program.
That's ultimately how they found that one child in Yuma, because everybody was going to the same place in Charleston, South Carolina. Ms. Vaughn, you were going to expand on the phone calls, which I agree with you. I only have time to ask the question, what goes on in that phone call? And then I want to submit some stuff for the record, Mr. Chairman, after she's done.
Am I, okay.
Briefly.
Yeah, a phone call is not sufficient to detect whether the child is in a safe environment. A phone call is not enough to know if a child is being abused, if a child is in a forced labor trafficking situation. That is not acceptable monitoring and shouldn't be considered monitoring at all. That is just a contractor going through the motions of trying to see if a child is there. And frankly, I think almost all of these kids are actually lost because the federal government is taking no responsibility
The
for
gentleman's
them.
time's expired, but you have some unanimous consent requests?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a letter